A disabled woman arrived in a quiet northern town, never knowing something deadly had been hidden inside her leg braces. A retired Navy SEAL saw the fear in her eyes, but his German shepherd sensed something even darker. Before anyone spoke the truth, the dog stood between her and the world, like he already knew she was being hunted. Then the lights went out, the forest closed in, and strangers with cold eyes came to take back what she carried. What they did not expect was a broken girl who refused to fall, a SEAL who would not surrender, and a dog who chose her as his own. By sunrise at White Pine Lake, betrayal, courage, and a miracle no one could explain would collide in one final stand. Before this story begins, tell us where you're watching from or share how it made you feel, and please like and subscribe to help bring more stories like this to life. Morning in White Pine did not arrive with noise. It unfolded. Light spilled slowly across the frozen surface of the lake, turning it from dull gray into something that shimmered faintly, like a memory trying to remember itself. Pines stood tall along the shoreline, their dark needles whispering with the wind that never quite stopped in northern Minnesota. Caleb Vance was already awake before the sun reached the tree line. He always was. At 41, sleep came in fragments, like broken radio transmissions, never complete, never quiet. His body still belonged to a different world, one where silence meant danger and stillness meant waiting. He stepped out onto the narrow wooden dock behind his cabin, boots heavy but quiet against the worn planks. The lake stretched out before him, endless and indifferent. Caleb stood tall, just over 6 feet, his build lean and functional, like something carved for purpose rather than display. His face was clean-shaven, sharp angles defining his jaw and cheekbones. His skin carried the pale tone of northern winters, weathered by wind and time. His dark brown hair was cut short, military style, though slightly longer than regulation, as if he had stepped away from discipline but never fully left it behind. His gray-blue eyes moved across the horizon, always scanning, always measuring. He wore the same clothes he always wore, an old olive-gray tactical combat shirt softened by years of wear, its cuffs frayed and shoulders faded by sun and storm. Earth-toned combat pants hung just loose enough for movement, knees worn thin, pockets sagging from use. His boots were old military work boots, cracked but reliable. A scratched military watch rested on his wrist, ticking steadily, indifferent to peace. Behind him, a soft shift of weight. Caleb didn't turn. He didn't need to. Rex had already stepped onto the dock. The German shepherd moved like a shadow with muscle, 4.5 years old. Black and tan coat catching the morning light in sharp contrast. His build was lean, powerful, every line of his body shaped by training, not comfort. His amber eyes held a focus that didn't belong to pets. Rex wasn't a pet. He was a survivor. The dog paused beside Caleb, sitting without command, posture upright but relaxed. His ears twitched once, catching something distant. Caleb exhaled slowly. "You hear it too?" Rex didn't respond. He never did. Not in the way people expected. But his tail gave one slow, deliberate movement. That was enough. The ferry horn came low and distant, echoing across the lake. It arrived every morning from the South Shore, carrying supplies, tourists, and the occasional mistake, people who thought they wanted quiet until they found out what quiet really meant. Caleb didn't care about the ferry. He rarely did. But Rex stood, not sharply, not alarmed, just different. His ears rose higher, his head tilted slightly, his nose lowered toward the wind. Caleb noticed immediately. Rex did nothing without reason. The dog stepped forward, moving closer to the edge of the dock, gaze fixed on the approaching ferry. not scanning the people, not searching the shoreline. Smelling. Caleb's eyes narrowed slightly. "What is it, boy?" Rex inhaled again, slow, controlled. Then his body stilled, not tense, not aggressive, focused. And that was worse. The ferry docked with its usual mechanical groan, metal against wood, ropes thrown, boots stepping across planks. White Pine woke slowly. A man in a thick plaid jacket stepped off first. Harold Finch, a local fisherman in his 60s with a thick gray beard and a permanent squint from years staring at water. He carried a crate of supplies and nodded toward Caleb. "Mornin'." Caleb gave a short nod back. Harold was harmless, predictable, the kind of man who lived his whole life within 20 miles of where he was born. Behind him came a young couple, tourists, easy to spot. Bright jackets, uncertain steps, eyes too wide for a place like this. Rex didn't move, didn't care. Then more people. A woman in her 50s with a floral scarf. A man with a camera. A delivery worker hauling boxes. Nothing. Rex remained still. Then he stepped forward. Just one step. His nose dipped lower, closer to the wind, and for the first time since Caleb had known him, Rex's breathing changed. Subtle, but real. Rex didn't growl, he didn't bark, he didn't show teeth. Instead, he shifted his stance, not toward the crowd, but slightly to the side. Like he was positioning himself between something and something else that hadn't even arrived yet. Caleb felt it then. Not fear, not danger. Something colder. Recognition. A figure emerged near the back of the ferry line. Slow, careful. A young woman stepped onto the dock, supported by a pair of titanium forearm crutches. Each movement was measured, deliberate, like every step required negotiation with pain. Her name was Eliza Harrow. She was 29, though the faint shadows beneath her eyes made her seem older in certain light. Her frame was slender, almost fragile, wrapped in a long navy coat that moved gently with the wind. Beneath it, her legs were supported by rigid braces, carbon and metal structures visible through the fabric, engineered to hold her upright. Her hair, light brown and loosely tied, shifted across her face as she paused, adjusting her balance. Her skin was pale, not from lack of sun, but from exhaustion that sleep couldn't fix. Her eyes, soft blue, held something quieter than fear. Resignation. She wasn't looking at the lake. She wasn't looking at the people. She was looking Kuon. At each step, as if the world only existed 1 inch at a time. Rex moved again. This time, Caleb felt it in his bones. The dog didn't approach her, didn't rush, didn't even make a sound. He simply adjusted his position, placing himself slightly ahead of Caleb, angled toward the dock. Guarding. But from what? Caleb's gaze shifted to Eliza, then to her legs. Then he smelled it, faint, almost impossible to catch. But it was there. Not medical, not natural, industrial, clean metal, machined, hidden. Caleb's jaw tightened slightly. "That's not from a hospital," he murmured. Rex's ears flicked once. Agreement. Eliza reached the end of the dock, pausing for just a moment as if the world had tilted beneath her feet. Her grip tightened on the crutches. Her breath hitched. Then she moved again. One step, then another. No one helped her. No one noticed her. That was the way of places like this. People weren't cruel. They were just busy surviving their own lives. Caleb watched her longer than he intended. Not because of pity. He didn't do pity. Because something didn't fit. Rex sat beside him again, but not fully relaxed. His body remained slightly angled toward the woman, as if tracking her movement without looking directly at her. "Easy," Caleb said quietly. Rex didn't move, didn't blink, didn't break. The wind shifted, just slightly, and the scent came stronger. Metal. Not worn. Not old. New. Precise. Wrong. Eliza disappeared up the path toward town, her figure growing smaller against the backdrop of pine and sky. Rex remained still, watching. Long after she was gone, Caleb followed his gaze, then looked down at his dog. "You're not seeing a threat," he said slowly. Rex's tail moved once. Caleb exhaled. "No." His eyes returned to the path. "You're seeing something else." The lake remained quiet. The town returned to its slow rhythm, but something had shifted. Not loudly, not visibly, just enough. Like the first crack in ice before it breaks. Caleb turned back toward the cabin. Rex followed, but after 3 steps, he stopped. Looked back once more, toward the empty path, toward where Eliza had disappeared. His ears remained high, his body still, as if waiting for something that hadn't happened yet, but would. And somewhere beneath the calm surface of white pine, something had already begun moving. White pine did not change for strangers. It simply absorbed them. By mid-morning, the town had settled into its quiet rhythm. The diner opened its doors with the smell of coffee drifting into the street. The general store creaked awake. A pickup truck rattled past, tires crunching lightly over gravel still damp from the night frost. And yet, something underneath that rhythm felt slightly off. Not loud enough to notice, but enough for a man like Caleb Vance. Eliza Harrow reached the small inn at the edge of town just before noon. The sign above the door read White Pine Lodge, its paint slightly chipped, its charm intact. Inside, warmth replaced the sharp northern air. A fireplace crackled softly in the corner. Behind the front desk stood Martha Klein, a woman in her early 60s with soft gray hair tied into a loose bun. Her face carried gentle lines shaped by years of smiling, more than frowning. She was short, slightly rounded in build, wearing a knitted cardigan the color of dried leaves. She looked up as the door opened. "Oh, honey," Martha said instinctively, stepping out from behind the desk. "Take your time." Eliza gave a small nod, her grip tightening on her crutches as she crossed the threshold. The metal braces along her legs clicked faintly with each movement. "I'm fine," Eliza murmured, though her voice betrayed a quiet exhaustion. Martha didn't argue. She had lived long enough to recognize when someone needed dignity more than help. "You must be Eliza Harrow," she said gently. "Room's ready. First floor. No stairs." Eliza exhaled a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. "Thank you." As Martha handed over the key, her eyes flickered briefly to the braces. Not pity, just understanding. Outside, Caleb stood across the street, half-shadowed by the overhang of the general store. He wasn't watching Eliza. Not directly. He never watched anything directly. But his eyes tracked her reflection in the glass windows. Beside him, Rex sat, still, quiet, but not relaxed. The dog's ears shifted in small increments, picking up layers of sound no human could parse. His amber eyes followed movement in short, precise adjustments. "Easy," Caleb muttered under his breath. Rex didn't move. The bell above the lodge door rang again. 3 new figures entered. They didn't hesitate. Didn't look around like tourists. They walked in like men and women who already knew the layout. Caleb noticed immediately. The first was Victor Hale, He carried himself with quiet confidence, the kind that didn't need to announce itself. Mid-40s, tall, lean, his posture straight without stiffness. His dark brown hair was neatly combed, and his clean-shaven face held sharp symmetry, too precise to be accidental. He wore a tailored navy coat, perfectly fitted, the kind that belonged in cities, not towns like White Pine. His eyes did not wander. They selected. Behind him walked Marcus Dane. Marcus was built like a man who had spent his life solving problems with force. Broad shoulders, thick arms beneath a heavy dark jacket. His face was rough, marked with faint scars along the cheekbone and jawline, his stubble uneven, as if shaving wasn't a priority. He did not smile, did not speak. He simply followed. The third was Lena Cross. She moved with a quiet precision that felt almost surgical. Slim, controlled, her black hair pulled back into a tight knot. Her skin was pale, her features sharp. She wore a simple gray coat, minimal and efficient. Her eyes scanned everything, but never stayed long enough to be noticed. Inside the lodge, Martha greeted them the same way she greeted everyone. "Welcome to White Pine." Victor smiled. Warm, polite, convincing. "Thank you," he said smoothly. "Beautiful place you have here." His voice carried an ease that made people relax, but it did not reach his eyes. Outside, Rex stood, without command, without warning. His entire body shifted forward, weight balanced, muscles tightening, not for attack, but for something far more deliberate. He turned his head, not toward the lodge door, but toward the side wall, as if tracking something moving behind it, something he could not see, but could feel. Caleb's breath slowed. That was not scent, that was not sound, that was instinct crossing into something deeper. And for the first time that morning, Caleb felt a flicker of something he had not allowed himself in years. Not fear. Not yet. But the memory of it. Inside, Eliza had just reached the hallway leading to her room when she paused. A strange sensation brushed through her. Not pain. Not quite. Something heavy, like being watched. She turned her head slightly. Victor stood near the front desk, signing the guest book. Marcus lingered near the entrance. Lena stood by the window. None of them looked at her, not directly. But something about the air felt tighter. Eliza shook it off. She was tired. Everything felt strange when she was tired. Back outside, Caleb stepped away from the store. "Let's walk," he said quietly. Rex fell into position beside him. But as they moved, the dog glanced once more toward the lodge. Not long. Just enough. Caleb did not like patterns, because patterns meant intention, and intention meant someone was making decisions. He crossed the street slowly, boots steady against the pavement. From the outside, the lodge looked unchanged, peaceful, ordinary. But Caleb knew better. Places did not change. People did, and people brought everything with them. Inside, Victor closed the guest book. His fingers lingered on the page just a fraction longer than necessary. Then he turned. His gaze moved casually across the room and stopped, for less than a second, on the hallway where Eliza had disappeared. Marcus noticed. Lena noticed. They did not react, but they registered it. Caleb entered the lodge. The warmth hit him immediately. Too warm. Too still. Rex stepped in beside him, posture controlled, movements fluid. Martha looked up again. "Back already?" She smiled. Caleb gave a slight nod. "Coffee," he said. "Of course." Her voice softened. She always kept a pot ready. Victor glanced at Caleb briefly. Just enough. Then looked away. Two men. Two predators. passing in silence, each measuring the other. Caleb took the cup Martha handed him. Black, hot, simple. He leaned lightly against the counter, gaze drifting casually across the room. Marcus stood near the door, still, watching without appearing to watch. Lena adjusted her sleeve, her reflection in the window giving her a wider view than anyone would expect. Victor sat down in one of the chairs, posture relaxed, one leg crossed over the other. Perfect. Too perfect. Rex lay down beside Caleb, but his head remained lifted, eyes open, focused. Upstairs, Eliza sat on the edge of her bed. Her legs ached, a deep burning ache that pulsed through the braces. She reached down, adjusting one of the straps. For a moment, she hesitated. Her fingers paused against the metal. Something about it felt off. She could not explain it, had not noticed it before, but now it felt heavier, colder, as if it did not belong to her. She shook her head. "No," she whispered. "Just fatigue. Just her imagination." Downstairs, Caleb set his coffee aside. His eyes flicked once toward the hallway, then back to the room. Nothing moved. Nothing happened. But everything felt like it was waiting. Rex's ears twitched. Once. Twice. Then stilled again. Caleb spoke quietly, not looking at the dog. "We're not the only ones paying attention, are we?" Rex did not respond, but his tail moved once. Slow. Certain. Outside, the wind picked up slightly, rustling the trees. White pine remained calm, unchanged, as if nothing had happened, as if nothing would. But beneath that calm, threads had already begun to tighten, invisible, precise, unforgiving. And somewhere between a man who trusted instincts and a dog who never ignored them, a quiet truth settled in. This was not coincidence. This was design. White pine did not panic. It tightened. The town still looked the same on the surface. The lake shimmered beneath a pale sky. The wind carried the scent of pine and cold water. A truck passed now and then. Someone laughed outside the diner. But the rhythm had changed. Subtle, like a heartbeat skipping once, then continuing as if nothing had happened. Sheriff Ethan Cole noticed first. He always did. At 50, Ethan carried himself like a man who had seen enough to distrust anything that felt too quiet. He stood just under 6 feet, his frame solid, not bulky, shaped by years of physical work rather than gym discipline. His hair had gone mostly gray, cut short and practical. A permanent crease sat between his brows, carved there by decades of responsibility rather than anger. His uniform fit him well, worn but maintained. His badge was clean. His boots were not. Ethan stood outside the sheriff's office, looking down at the small notepad in his hand. 3 unfamiliar vehicles, one parked near the lodge, one near the diner, one out by the service road. Different plates. Too clean, too deliberate. He lifted his gaze toward the street. Tourists didn't spread out like that. They clustered. They wandered. They got lost. These people had positions. Ethan closed the notepad slowly. "That's not right," he muttered. Caleb didn't go looking for trouble. Trouble came looking for patterns. And patterns led him back to the lake. Eliza had decided to walk. Not far. Just enough to remind herself she could. The path near the water curved gently, bordered by low wooden fencing and patches of frost still clinging to the grass in the shade. Each step was careful, measured. The braces along her legs supported her weight, but they did not remove the pain. They never had. She moved slowly, her crutches pressing into the ground, with a steady rhythm, step, tap, step, tap. Her breathing stayed controlled, but her shoulders were tense. She hated being seen like this, hated the quiet glances the space people gave her, not out of kindness, out of discomfort. She didn't hear Caleb approach. Most people didn't. He moved like someone who had learned long ago that noise could get you killed. Your right brace is misaligned. Eliza froze. Her grip tightened on the crutches as she turned her head slightly. Caleb stood a few feet away, still, calm, observing, not staring. His gray-blue eyes moved briefly across her posture, her stance, the angle of her legs. Assessing. Up close, he looked even more carved from something harder than ordinary life. No beard, clean lines across his jaw, skin weathered by cold wind and years of exposure. There was no softness in his expression. But there was no threat either, just clarity. "I'm fine," Eliza said quickly. Automatic, defensive. Caleb nodded once. "I didn't say you weren't," he replied. A pause, then quieter. "I said it's off." Eliza hesitated. Her instinct told her to refuse. Her body told her something else. The pain in her right leg pulsed slightly sharper than before. "Just a little," she admitted. Caleb stepped closer, slowly enough not to startle her. "May I?" She studied him for a second. Something about him didn't feel invasive, didn't feel like pity. It felt practical. She nodded. Caleb crouched down. Rex appeared a moment later, silent as falling snow, taking position slightly behind Caleb's shoulder. The dog did not look at Eliza. He looked at the brace. Caleb's fingers moved carefully along the structure. Carbon fiber, titanium reinforcement, high-end work. But his hand paused. There, a joint. Too smooth, too precise. His thumb pressed lightly against the seam. Rex let out a low sound, not a growl, something quieter, deeper. Caleb's fingers shifted slightly, tracing the edge of the metal. And then he felt it. Not a flaw, not damage, a pattern. Microscopic, machined, deliberate. His pulse slowed, not in fear, in recognition. He had touched something like this before. Not on a battlefield, not on a weapon, on something worse. Something designed to disappear. Caleb didn't look up, but his voice changed. Just slightly. "How long have you had these?" Eliza blinked. "About 6 months," she said. "After my last procedure." "Who did the work?" "A specialist in the city, Dr. Nolan Pierce." The name meant nothing to most people, but Caleb filed it away, carefully. He adjusted the joint, applying subtle pressure until the alignment shifted back into place. "Try now." Eliza stepped forward. The difference was immediate. Small, but real. Her breath caught. "That's better." Caleb stood. Dust brushed from his hands. His eyes moved once more to the brace, then away. Rex stepped closer. This time he didn't hold distance. He lowered his head. Not toward Eliza, toward her leg. His nose hovered just above the metal. Then he pulled back and sat. Between her and the open path. Eliza noticed. "Is he okay?" Caleb glanced at Rex. "He's doing his job." "What job?" Caleb didn't answer right away. His gaze drifted across the lake, then back to her, paying attention. A shadow moved at the far end of the path. Marcus Dane. He stood near the trees, partially obscured, watching, not hiding, not fully, just enough. Eliza didn't see him. Caleb did. Rex already had. Caleb stepped back. "You should head back to the lodge," he said calmly. Eliza frowned slightly. "Why?" "Because," Caleb replied, his tone even, "you don't know what you're carrying." She blinked. "What?" Caleb met her eyes. For the first time, fully. And in that moment, Eliza felt something shift inside her. Not fear, not yet. But the beginning of it. Behind them, Marcus turned, walked away. Slow, controlled. Rex remained where he was, still between Eliza and the world. Caleb exhaled quietly, then nodded once. "Go." Eliza didn't argue this time. She turned, moved carefully back toward town. Her steps slightly steadier now, but her thoughts were not steady at all. Caleb watched until she disappeared. Then he looked down at Rex. That's not a coincidence. Rex's tail moved once. Far across town, Sheriff Ethan Cole stood beside one of the unfamiliar vehicles. He crouched slightly, examining the tire. Fresh, clean, too clean. He stood, looked toward the lodge, then toward the lake. 3 separate threads, 3 separate instincts, beginning to align. And somewhere in the quiet center of White Pine, the stillness cracked just a little more. White Pine held its silence tighter that afternoon. Clouds moved in slowly from the north, dimming the light just enough to make the lake lose its shine. The air felt heavier, as if the town itself had begun holding its breath. Inside Caleb Vance's cabin, the world narrowed, not to comfort, to truth. Eliza sat on the edge of a wooden chair near the small table, her crutches leaning against the wall within reach. The cabin smelled faintly of pine wood and old metal, a place built for survival rather than decoration. She hadn't said much since Caleb brought her there. Her hands rested in her lap, fingers loosely intertwined, though the tension in them betrayed everything she was trying not to show. Across from her, Caleb stood near the window, watching the tree line. Not because he expected something to appear, but because he always expected something to appear. Rex lay between them, not relaxed, never relaxed. His body rested low to the floor, but his head remained lifted, ears alert, eyes shifting occasionally between Caleb and Eliza. "You said I don't know what I'm carrying." Eliza's voice was quiet, not fragile, but controlled. Caleb turned from the window. His gray-blue eyes studied her for a moment. Measured. Careful. Then he walked over and crouched in front of her again, the same way he had by the lake. Not above her. Not over her, level. "I need to confirm something before I say more," he said. Eliza nodded. "Then confirm it." Caleb reached for the brace again. This time he didn't adjust. He examined. His fingers traced along the reinforced section he had noticed earlier. The seam was nearly invisible unless you knew what you were looking for. He pressed slightly, then stopped. Rex shifted, not aggressively, but with focus sharpened to a razor edge. Caleb stood slowly. "That's not medical." Eliza swallowed. "What does that mean?" "It means," Caleb said, voice steady, "someone changed it after it left the manufacturer." Her eyes flickered. "No, that's not possible." "Who handled your braces last?" Eliza hesitated, her mind searching backward, sorting memory from routine. "Dr. Nolan Pierce," she said. "He adjusted them during my last appointment. Said the hinges needed recalibration." Caleb nodded once. That's when it happened. Silence settled, heavy, not loud, but pressing. Eliza shook her head slightly. No, he's been my doctor for years. He helped me walk again. Her voice cracked once, then steadied. He wouldn't... Caleb didn't interrupt. He let the thought reach its own end. People don't always show you who they are, Caleb said quietly. Sometimes they show you what you need to see. Eliza looked down at her legs, at the braces, at the thing that had carried her through pain, through recovery, through every step she had fought to take. Her breathing slowed, then changed. Not panic. Something deeper. A quiet fracture. So what is it? She asked. Caleb didn't answer immediately. Instead, he moved to the table and reached for a small device. A worn black phone, older model, heavily modified. He tapped the screen. Waited. A voice answered after 2 rings. Didn't think you'd call, the voice said. It belonged to Mason Reed. Mason was in his early 40s, though his voice carried the tired edge of someone who had spent too many years staring at problems no one else could solve. He was tall but thin, his frame more suited to a desk than a battlefield. His sandy blonde hair was unkempt, his glasses slightly crooked, always sliding down his nose when he leaned too close to a screen. He had never been a fighter, but he had built things for fighters, and broken things that weren't supposed to be broken. I need a read, Caleb said. You always do. Caleb turned the camera toward the brace. Mason leaned closer on the other end. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Mason exhaled sharply. Yeah, he said. That single word changed everything. Mason's voice dropped. That's not just modified hardware. Caleb's eyes narrowed. What is it? A pause. Then Mason said, It's hollow. Eliza's head snapped up. What? Mason continued, his tone now clinical and precise. There's a compartment inside the titanium support. Precision milled, not amateur work. Whoever did this had access to advanced fabrication tools. Silence filled the cabin. Then Mason added quieter. And whatever's inside, it wasn't meant to be found. Eliza's world tilted. Not physically, internally. Her hand moved slowly toward her leg, then stopped halfway, as if touching it might make it real. No, she whispered. No, that's not possible. Caleb didn't look away from the screen. Mason, purpose. Another pause. Then Mason said, Data transport. High level. Probably encrypted. Military or corporate. Eliza let out a breath that sounded like it had been trapped in her lungs for years. They used me. Not a question. A realization. Caleb ended the call. The cabin felt smaller now. Tighter. Like the walls had shifted inward. They needed a carrier that wouldn't be searched, Caleb said. Medical equipment gets passed through checkpoints. No questions asked. Eliza stared at him. You're saying I've been walking around with something people would kill for? Caleb met her gaze. Yes. The word did not hit like an explosion. It sank. Slow. Heavy. Permanent. Eliza leaned forward, elbows on her knees, her face in her hands. Her shoulders didn't shake. She didn't cry. That would have been easier. Instead, she sat there breathing, trying to understand how something so personal had been taken from her without her knowing. Rex stood. He walked toward her slowly, deliberately. He didn't rush. Didn't hesitate. He stopped in front of her, then lowered his head and rested it gently against her knee. Not soft, not comforting in the way people think comfort should feel. Solid, present, unmoving. Eliza froze, her hands lowered slowly. She looked at the dog, at the weight of him, at the quiet certainty in his posture. Rex did not look at her. He looked outward, toward the door, toward the world. Caleb watched, then spoke quietly. "He's not trying to make you feel better." Eliza blinked. "Then why?" "He's telling you something." She swallowed. "What?" Caleb's voice dropped slightly. "Stay where you are." Eliza stared at the dog, at the way he held position, at the way his body formed a line between her and everything else. For the first time since arriving in White Pine, she did not feel like she was falling. She felt held, not by comfort, by something stronger, something that did not break. Outside, the wind picked up, branches shifted. Somewhere in the distance, a car door closed. Caleb moved back toward the window. His eyes scanned the tree line again, then the road, then the lake. "They know," he said quietly. Eliza's breath caught. "How?" Caleb did not turn. "Because people like that don't lose track of something this valuable." Rex did not move, not an inch. Inside the cabin, something had changed. Not just the situation, the balance. Eliza straightened slightly. Not fully, not strong yet, but no longer collapsed. Her hand rested lightly on Rex's head. Not for comfort, for grounding. Caleb glanced back once, then nodded. Outside, the trees whispered again, but now it sounded less like wind and more like warning. Night did not fall in White Pine. It was taken, the power cut without warning. No flicker, no hum fading. Just darkness. One moment, the town breathed in dim yellow light. The next, it exhaled into black. Inside Caleb Vance's cabin, the shift was immediate. The overhead bulb died. The low hum of electricity vanished. Even the distant glow from the lake disappeared, swallowed by the thickening dark. But Caleb did not move, because he had already known. Rex stood before the lights went out. That was the first sign. The dog had risen from the floor 10 seconds earlier, muscles tightening, head lifting, ears angling toward something far beyond human range. Caleb had seen it. And when Rex rose, Caleb had already stepped toward the wall. His hand found the flashlight before the darkness fully arrived. A narrow beam cut through the black. White, controlled, minimal, enough to see, not enough to reveal. Eliza's breath caught. What just happened?" Her voice trembled, not from fear alone, but from the sudden collapse of normality. The world had rules. Lights didn't just disappear. Caleb didn't answer. He was listening. Not to sound. To absence. Outside, nothing. No engines. No voices. No footsteps. And that was wrong. Because silence, real silence, did not exist. Not unless someone made it. Rex moved toward the door. Slow. Deliberate. He didn't bark. Didn't growl. He simply stood there. Waiting. "They're here," Caleb said quietly. Eliza's chest tightened. Her hands gripped the edge of the chair. "Who?" Caleb's voice didn't change. "The people who want what you're carrying." Across town, Sheriff Ethan Cole slammed his hand against the dashboard of his cruiser. "Come on," he muttered. The radio hissed. Dead. His phone showed no signal. Not weak. Gone. Ethan stepped out of the vehicle. The street was black. Not dim. Black. Even the streetlights had died. That wasn't a grid failure. That was control. A figure moved near the edge of the road. Ethan's hand dropped instinctively toward his holster. Stop right there. The figure stepped into partial light. Deputy Aaron Mills. Aaron was young, late 20s, tall but still carrying the stiffness of someone new to authority. His blonde hair was cut short, his uniform slightly too crisp, like he still cared what people thought of him. His face held the earnestness of a man who had not yet seen enough to distrust everything. Sheriff, Aaron said, breath slightly quick. Power's out everywhere. Phones too. Ethan nodded once. Not everywhere, he said. Just here. Aaron frowned. What do you mean? Ethan looked toward the tree line. I mean, someone turned it off. Back at the cabin, Caleb killed the flashlight. Darkness swallowed them again. But this time, it was intentional. Stay behind me, he said. Eliza nodded, though he couldn't see it. Her body had gone rigid. Her mind raced, every thought colliding with the same realization. This wasn't an accident. This was about her. A soft sound came from outside. Not loud, but precise. A footstep. Rex's body shifted instantly. Lower, coiled, not explosive, contained. Caleb moved, silent, measured. His hand brushed against the edge of a drawer. Opened it. Inside, a pistol. Compact. Worn. Real. He didn't rush. Didn't panic. Because panic got people killed. The door handle moved. Slowly. Testing. Eliza's breath stopped. The handle paused. Then turned. Before the door opened, Rex stepped forward, not toward the door, but slightly to the side. His body angled not at the entrance. Oh! Point just off center, as if he knew exactly where the threat would appear before it appeared. Caleb's grip tightened on the weapon, not because he saw something, because Rex did, and Rex was never wrong. The door burst inward, fast, controlled. A figure entered. Marcus Dane. He moved like a battering ram wrapped in human form. His broad shoulders filled the doorway, his heavy boots silent despite his size. His eyes scanned once, quick and efficient. But he wasn't alone. Behind him, two more. One of them hesitated, just for a fraction of a second. A man in his 30s, lean, with sharp cheekbones and tired eyes. Evan Rourke. Evan didn't look like the others. His movements were trained, but not hardened. His gaze flickered not across the room, but toward Eliza. And in that flicker, something human remained. The third figure stayed outside, unseen, but present. Stay down, Caleb said quietly. Not to them, to Eliza. Marcus stepped forward. No need for this, he said, voice low, controlled. We're not here to hurt anyone. Caleb didn't answer, because lies didn't deserve responses. Evan shifted slightly. His hand tightened around his weapon, but his eyes did not settle. Victor Hale stepped into the doorway behind them. Clean, composed, untouched by darkness. Mr. Vance, Victor said smoothly. Let's not complicate this. Caleb's stance didn't change. Then leave. Victor smiled, thin, empty. We both know that's not an option. Eliza's heart pounded. Her ears rang. Her body wanted to move, but she couldn't. Not fast enough. Not strong enough. Rex moved, not forward, Not yet. He adjusted, tracking, calculating. Victor's eyes shifted toward Eliza. There it is, he said softly. Evan's jaw tightened. Take it, Victor said. Marcus stepped forward, and then Rex exploded. Not with sound, with motion. He struck low, fast, precise. His body collided with Marcus's leg, unbalancing the larger man before he could react. Not a bite, a disruption. Caleb moved at the same time. Not after, not before, with. He closed distance in 2 steps. A strike, controlled, efficient. Marcus hit the ground hard. Evan froze. Just long enough. Victor didn't. The cabin filled with movement, shadows clashing in tight space, light flashing from brief, controlled bursts. Eliza pressed back against the wall, her mind screaming, her body refusing. She watched. Not as a victim, as something else, something changing. Evan lowered his weapon. Just slightly. Enough. Victor noticed. Don't, Victor said quietly. Evan didn't move, didn't fire, didn't step forward. That hesitation cost them. Caleb drove Marcus fully to the ground. Rex shifted again, placing himself between Eliza and everything else. Victor stepped back, recalculating, always calculating. This isn't over, he said. Then he turned, gone as quickly as he arrived. Evan hesitated one last second, then followed. Silence returned, not peaceful, not empty, but earned. Caleb stood, breathing steady, controlled. Rex remained in place, guarding. Eliza slid slowly down the wall, not collapsing, settling. Her hands trembled, but her eyes were different now. She looked at Caleb, then at Rex. They came for me. Caleb nodded, and for the first time, she didn't deny it. The cabin did not feel safe anymore. Not after the silence had been broken. Not after the door had been forced open, and men had walked in with purpose, not doubt. Caleb Vance did not waste time deciding. He had already decided. Get up, he said quietly. Eliza looked at him, her body still trembling from the aftermath of the attack. The world had shifted too fast, too violently. But something inside her had changed as well. She didn't argue. She reached for her crutches, stood. Slowly. Rex was already at the door. Not waiting. Preparing. Outside, the night air cut sharper. The forest loomed beyond the clearing, dark and endless, the tall pines forming a wall that swallowed light and sound alike. Caleb stepped out first. Rex followed. Eliza came last. They didn't head toward the road. Caleb avoided open space. He moved toward the trees. The moment they crossed into the forest, the world changed. The wind softened. The ground muffled sound. The darkness deepened. Rex moved ahead. Not far. Never out of sight. His body low, fluid, silent. He wasn't leading. He was reading. Every shift in air. Every broken twig. Every scent that didn't belong. Eliza struggled to keep pace. Her braces made movement possible, but not easy. Each step through uneven ground sent small shocks of pain up her spine. Her breathing grew heavier, but she did not stop. Behind them, a sound. Distant, faint, but real. They're tracking, Caleb said. Eliza's grip tightened. How close? Caleb didn't turn. Close enough. The forest thickened. Branches reached lower. The ground dipped and rose unpredictably. Caleb adjusted his path constantly, choosing terrain that slowed pursuit without trapping them. Rex stopped, Instantly. Caleb froze. Eliza nearly stumbled but caught herself at the last second. Rex's head tilted slightly, ears forward, body still. Then he shifted direction. Not forward. Left. Caleb followed without question. They moved again. Faster now. More deliberate. Behind them, something changed. The sound of pursuit split. "They're dividing," Caleb said. Eliza's chest tightened. "Why?" "Because they think they're hunting us." A branch snapped somewhere to the right. Closer. Marcus Dane. He moved through the forest like something heavy that didn't care about being heard. Because he didn't need to. He relied on pressure, on presence, on inevitability. Eliza felt it before she saw him. The weight of something approaching. Something that didn't hesitate. Caleb stopped. Turned. "No more running," he said. Eliza stared at him. "What?" Rex moved back. Not retreating. Positioning. "You won't outrun them," Caleb said calmly. "Not in this terrain. Not with your condition." Her breath hitched. "So what do we do?" Caleb's eyes locked onto hers, and for a moment, everything else disappeared. "You decide," he said. Eliza blinked. "What?" "You keep running," Caleb continued, voice steady, "and they chase you until you collapse." A pause, then softer. "Or you stop running and trust us." The forest held its breath. Eliza looked past him, into the darkness. She could hear it now, footsteps. Closer, heavier, certain. Her body screamed to move, to escape, to hide. But something else rose beneath that instinct. Something new, something she hadn't felt before. She looked at Rex. The dog stood still, not aggressive, not frantic, ready, waiting, for her. Eliza took a breath, then another, and she stopped. "I'm not running," she said. Caleb nodded once. Behind them, Marcus stepped into view. He didn't rush, didn't charge. He walked, like the outcome was already decided. "You're making this harder than it needs to be," Marcus said, voice low, almost bored. Caleb didn't answer. Eliza didn't move. Marcus's eyes shifted to her, then to her legs. "There it is," he murmured. Marcus took one more step forward, and for a fraction of a second, his eyes met Eliza's, not as a target, not as an object, but as a person. Something flickered, brief, almost invisible. Then it was gone. His hand moved. Rex exploded forward, not wild, not uncontrolled, perfect. He struck low again, faster than the human eye could track, his body colliding with Marcus's knee at an angle designed not to destroy, but to break balance. Marcus staggered, not falling, but disrupted. Caleb moved at the same time, closing distance, controlling space. A strike, precise, measured. Marcus absorbed it, adjusted, countered. This was not an amateur. Eliza stood frozen, but not helpless. Her eyes tracked everything, every movement, every shift. Rex circled, not attacking again. Waiting. Caleb stepped back half a pace. Reset. Marcus straightened, breathing steady, eyes sharp. "You think this ends here?" Marcus said quietly. Caleb didn't respond, because answers weren't given. They were shown. Rex shifted again. This time he placed himself directly in front of Eliza. Not moving, not striking, standing, between her and Marcus. And in that moment something changed. Eliza felt it. Not fear, Something else, something solid. She wasn't behind him. She was with him. Marcus saw it too, and for the first time he hesitated, not out of doubt, but out of recalculation. Somewhere deeper in the forest, a distant voice crackled. Sheriff Ethan Cole stood beside his cruiser, radio in hand. Static filled the air. Then a voice broke through, faint, unstable, but real. Federal response delayed hold position. Ethan closed his eyes briefly, then opened them again. Damn it, he muttered. Help was coming, but not fast enough. Back in the forest, Marcus stepped back, not retreating, not surrendering, choosing. This isn't over, he said again. Then he turned, vanished into the trees. Rex didn't chase. He stayed, because his job wasn't to hunt. It was to guard. Eliza's legs trembled, but she didn't fall. She looked at Caleb, then at Rex. I didn't run, she said softly. Caleb nodded. No, he said. You didn't. And somewhere in the cold, breathing forest, the hunt had changed. Dawn did not arrive gently over White Pine. It cut through the night like a blade. Cold light spread across the lake, turning the surface into a sheet of pale steel. Mist hovered just above the water, drifting slowly, as if the world itself hadn't fully decided to wake. Caleb Vance stood at the edge of the shoreline. Still, waiting. He had chosen this place, not because it was safe, but because it was honest. No cover, no walls, no illusions. Behind him, Eliza stood a few steps back, her crutches pressed into the damp earth, her breath visible in the cold morning air. Her face looked different now, not untouched by fear, but shaped by it, refined. There was something steadier in her eyes, something that had not been there before. Rex stood between them, not shifting, not pacing, watching the horizon. Caleb's hand rested loosely at his side, not on his weapon. Not yet. They'll come from the open, he said quietly. Eliza nodded. She didn't ask how he knew. She had stopped asking questions that didn't matter. The mist moved. Then figures emerged. Victor Hale walked first, as always, clean, composed, untouched. Behind him, Marcus Dane, recovered, silent. And to the side, Evan Rourke. Evan looked different now, not physically, but something in his posture had shifted. Less certain, less aligned. Victor stopped a few yards away, far enough to control space, close enough to own it. This ends here, he said calmly. Caleb didn't respond. Victor's gaze moved to Eliza, then to her legs, then back to Caleb. Hand it over, Victor continued, and we all walk away. Caleb's voice was quiet. No. Victor smiled, not amused, not surprised. You misunderstand your position, he said. Marcus stepped forward half a pace. A reminder, not a threat. Victor's tone didn't change. But I'm willing to clarify. He reached into his coat, slowly, deliberately. Eliza's breath caught. Victor pulled out a small device, a remote. Inside that brace, Victor said softly, is not just data. Caleb's eyes narrowed. It's a prototype targeting algorithm, Victor continued. One that decides outcomes before decisions are made. War doesn't need soldiers anymore. It needs certainty. Eliza's stomach dropped. Victor tilted his head slightly. And right now that certainty is standing on two metal legs. Rex moved. Not forward, not aggressive. He turned. For the first time, he stepped away from Caleb and stood fully in front of Eliza, blocking her completely. Not because he was commanded, because he chose. Eliza felt it. The shift. Not protection. Something deeper. Recognition. She was not behind him. She was his. Not ownership. Belonging. Victor noticed. His eyes sharpened slightly. Interesting, he murmured. Caleb stepped forward. Just one step. You're not taking it, he said. Victor sighed. You always make it harder. His thumb hovered over the remote. Last chance. Caleb didn't slow, didn't hesitate. He moved, fast. The distance closed in a heartbeat. Marcus reacted instantly. They collided, force against precision. Marcus drove forward all. Caleb redirected. No wasted motion, no unnecessary strikes. Rex launched, not at Victor, at the angle, at the moment. He struck Marcus's flank, disrupting his balance just enough for Caleb to shift position. Evan raised his weapon, then stopped. His hands trembled. Victor saw it. Do it, Victor said sharply. Evan didn't move, for 1 second, 2, and that was enough. Caleb broke contact, turned, closed distance to Victor. Victor raised the remote, but Rex was faster. The dog didn't bite. He hit. A full-body impact that knocked Victor backward, the device flying from his hand into the cold grass. Marcus recovered, turned, but Caleb was already there. A strike. Clean, controlled. Marcus dropped to one knee. Evan lowered his weapon completely. I'm not doing this, he said. Victor struggled to stand. His composure cracked. Just slightly. You don't get to choose, Victor snapped. Evan stepped back. Yes, he said quietly. I do. The sound of engines broke the moment. Distant at first, then growing. Vehicles, multiple. Victor heard it. So did Caleb. Federal response. Too late to prevent. Just in time to end. Victor looked at Caleb, then at Eliza, then at Rex. Something unreadable passed through his eyes. Then he smiled. Another time, he said. But there would be no next time, because this time was already over. Lights cut through the mist. Voices followed. Commands. Movement. Sheriff Ethan Cole arrived first. His cruiser tore across the dirt path, stopping hard near the shoreline. He stepped out immediately, weapon drawn but controlled, eyes scanning, assessing. Behind him, federal units, black vehicles, armored presence. Among them, Agent Daniel Hargrove. Hargrove was a man built from restraint. Mid-50s, tall, with silver hair cut short, and a face that carried no wasted emotion. His suit was dark, perfectly fitted, but his posture was military. His eyes missed nothing. He took one look at the scene and understood everything. Stand down, he said calmly. Weapons lowered, hands raised. Victor didn't resist. Marcus didn't speak. Evan stepped away completely. Eliza stood still. Rex returned to her side. Not because he was called, because he chose to stay. Caleb exhaled, for the first time fully. Later, everything would unravel. Dr. Nolan Pierce arrested. The network exposed. Data secured. Statements taken. Questions asked. Caleb investigated, then released. Because some things didn't need to be written down. Sheriff Ethan Cole stood at the edge of it all, watching, listening, understanding more than he would ever say, and choosing to keep it that way. Eliza stood by the lake one last time, the morning now fully risen, the world brighter, but not simpler. She looked down at her legs, then at Rex, then at Caleb. "I'm not the same," she said quietly. Caleb nodded. "That's not a bad thing." Rex leaned slightly into her, solid, unmoving, certain. And in that moment, Eliza understood. She had been used, but she had not been broken. In the quiet moments after the storm, when the noise fades and the world feels still again, we are often left with one question. Why were we spared? Some call it luck. Some call it instinct. But there are moments in life that feel like something greater reached down and placed a hand between us and the darkness. A dog that knew before anyone else. A man who arrived at the exact right time. A life that could have been broken, but wasn't. Maybe that is not coincidence. Maybe that is grace. God does not always send miracles in the way we expect. Sometimes He sends them through the courage we didn't know we had. Sometimes through the people who refuse to walk away. And sometimes through a silent guardian who stands between us and what could have destroyed us. In our everyday lives, we all carry unseen battles. Pain that others don't notice. Fear we don't speak about. Moments where we feel small, vulnerable, or alone. But this story reminds us of something powerful. You are never as alone as you think. You are never as weak as you feel. And you are never beyond the reach of something greater than yourself. If this story touched your heart, take a moment to share it with someone who might need hope today. Leave a comment and tell us where you are watching from, and what part of the story stayed with you the most. Subscribe to the channel so we can continue bringing you stories that remind us of strength, faith, and purpose. And wherever you are right now, may God watch over you, guide your steps, and protect you in ways you may never even see.